So, makikita natin dito sa case na to kung gaano ka-importante ang intangibles. So, some brief background on the case. As I said earlier, so mayroong Danish subsidiary. So, itong H group na to, so there are a series of Danish registered firms which are subsidiaries of a parent firm in the United States. So, again, related to industrial manufacturing yung kanilang business. And merong transfer of intangibles na nag-occur between these related parties. So, itong subsidiaries, nag-transfer sila ng intangibles with agreement for payment of royalties between the related parties. So, itong intangibles na to include trademarks, patents. So, na-develop siya by the Danish firm. So, the outcome na magkaroon ng trademarks and patents, yung itong rights na to, it was because of the work that had been done by the local subsidiaries in Denmark. And so yung isa sa mga interesting things na na-mention in the case was the transfer of certain assets, itong certain intangibles, was actually not included in the TP documentation. Meron silang discuss or in-include sa TP documentation a certain transfer of intangibles, pero merong dispute as to the extent of ano ba yung dapat kasama. The SK80 or the tax authority in Denmark was unable to make a proper assessment of the said transfer because nga of the dispute on the inclusion of certain intangibles. The parties, however, both do recognize, so meaning both the tax authority, the SK80, and the H group, both recognize na meron naman talagang transfer of intangibles. It did indeed take place, but then yun nga, they're arguing as to the scope. So ano bang part ng intangibles yung dapat isama, ano yung hindi dapat isama, which would be sort of the crux of the case, and from here mag-system yung issues. So the key issues, again, what extent of the intangibles should have been considered transferred, and then secondly, of course, kung na-transfer na itong intangibles, paano ito na-subject ba to? Dapat ba ito na-subject to the tax assessment? And third, and I think this is something that is very difficult but a crucial question to answer. If yes, na dapat mag-include ng intangibles and ma-assess siya for tax liability, how should these intangibles be valued? So it's a very difficult concept, but yun yung isa sa mga sinusubukang i-assess and i-figure out nung tax authority, and part of the debate that was elevated to the National Tax Tribunal, which I think is the equivalent of the CTA in Denmark. So the SK80, so ito again, the SK80 or SCAT, this is the Danish Tax Authority, so this is the equivalent of the BIR. So the SCAT SK80 has rightly, sabi nung National Tax Tribunal, di ba? So nung inassess nila yung fact, sabi nila na the SCAT has actually rightly considered all of the company's intangible assets to have been transferred. So ang argument kasi nung firm, nung H group, is na dapat ito lang yung portion na na-transfer. Pero sabi nung tax authority na hindi kasama dapat to. So mas marami dapat yung intangible na kinount nyo as transferred at hindi nyo yun sinama sa TP documentation. So sabi nung National Tax Tribunal, or parang CTA nila, the rights to trademarks, know-how, and patents must be regarded as constituting such a crucial component of the H group's activities that the added value identified in connection with the share purchase called goodwill cannot be separated from these intangible assets. So nagkaroon sila ng debate over why goodwill, kung yung goodwill ba dapat is kasamang i-transfer, i-consider na i-transfer. And ina-argue kasi ng H group na hindi daw dapat yung transfer kasi iba naman daw yung considerations dun sa goodwill. But then sinasabi ng National Tax Tribunal na hindi mo pwedeng i-separate yung goodwill na nag-arise from your rights to the trademarks and patents. So, hindi sila separable, therefore, nung transfer mo yung rights dun sa trademarks and patents, automatically kailangan sumama yung goodwill dun sa transfer na yun. So, Goodwill is attached to the trademarks and valuable technology patents as these are a crucial component of the H Group's activities. In other words din, hindi ka pwede mag-operate in your business as H Group, hindi mo magagawa yung ginagawa in industrial manufacturing kung wala yung goodwill na associated with the trademarks and patents na intangibles na clinically ng transfer. So, isa yun sa key decisions ng National Tax Tribunal. Second, so the SKAT had been entitled to make an assessment on these intangibles which were not fully described in the TP documentation. So again, ang ano din dito is yung goodwill nga na hindi nila sinama dun sa TP documentation. Dahil hindi siya nasama, initially, hindi nakapag-make ng proper assessment yung tax authority. So in-argue ng tax authority na kung sasama mo to, kailangan mag-assess kami na kasama yung goodwill na yun dun sa intangibles. So the National Tax Tribunal ruled that yes, tama, tax authority, you had the right to assess including yung goodwill na yun. So ang nangyari was because hindi siya nasama sa TP documentation, the SKAT was not able or did not have the basis for assessing whether the transfer value claimed by the companies was actually in accordance with the arm's length principle. Kasi yung idea nito is, kung hindi mo naman nakita or na-assess yung value ng intangible asset na yun, then how would you as the tax authority know if nagkaroon ba, or if nag-apply ba ng arm's length principle in the transfer of those intangibles? So sabi ng tax authority, sabi ng National Tax Tribunal that yes, tax authority, kasama dapat yung intangible assets nila, particularly yung goodwill, and dapat ma-assess mo, magkaroon ka ng way to assess kung arm's length ba yung controlled transaction na yun. So, subsequently, ano din yung naging result nun? Consequently, siguro yung better word, ano din yung naging result nun? Sinabi rin ng National Tax Tribunal na yung royalties paid for the use of the intangible assets. So, di ba kasi nagbayad, ang agreement was nag-transfer si Danish subsidiary sa US parent, and then afterwards, we'll just pay royalties to the parent for the use of those intangible assets. So sabi ng Tax Tribunal, dahil hindi nga completely na-recognize yung transfer, subsequently, yung nangyari is yung royalties paid for the use of the intangible assets transferred were not in accordance with the transfer value in order of the magnitude applied by the SAT. So kulang siya. So yung pagbayad mo ng royalties na arm's length dapat, kailangan nire-recognize niya yung total value ng intangible assets na transfer. So dahil hindi mo sinama yung part, including particularly yung goodwill, then hindi mo mabavalue kung ano yung dapat royalties na binayad. So hindi mo malalaman kung arm's length ba yung royalties na binayad. So kailangan nilang isama para magkaroon ng assessment on the arm's length nature of the transaction, including the royalties payment. So, na-resolve na kasama dapat, di ba? Okay, sige, kasama. However, paano i-value? Yun ang naging next argument, di ba? So, and I think this is the more complicated part of the case, na dito talaga pumapasok yung technical know-how din in both industry and in the taxation and economic law. So, sabi ng National Tax Tribunal na okay kasama, pero SKAT, Tax Authority, hindi acceptable yung valuation na ginawa ninyo. Bakit? Masyado raw malaki yung uncertainty given the time inconsistency kung kailan nagkaroon ng transfer and ano yung naging use ng intangible assets na yun or ano yung naging benefit ng intangible assets na yun dun sa firm. So sabi nila, hindi mo pwedeng gamitin yung value ng intangible asset just simply at the time na bibili siya, so na nakatali dun sa share purchase. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na simple, ito yung binayad for the intangible assets at this time when it was transferred, din yun na yung magiging value niya. It's not as straightforward as that. So the National Tax Tribunal said na there has to be a way to value yung intangible assets in such a way na nire-recognize mo kung ano yung naging benefit niya to the firm at the time na ginagamit, meaning nag-benefit from that intangibles and goodwill ng firm. And so, yung naging final decision kung ano yung method na gagamitin para mag-value was yung tinatawag nilang relief from royalty method or royalty relief method, which basically values intangible assets based on arm's length royalty rates for comparable license agreements. So in short, ang nangyari lang dito is sabi ni National Tax Tribunal in terms of valuation, kailangan ang gawin natin is maghanap tayo ng comparable transaction na independent, and so, but the question is, anong klaseng transaction or anong klaseng independent transaction yung hahanapin natin? It's also other license agreements that you may compare with the trademarks and patents that are subject of the case. So, paano mo ngayon titignan? Ang gagawin mo is titignan mo kung ano yung value or ano yung value nung license agreement kung independent firms yung nagbabayad. Kasi may nagbabayad ng royalty for trademark or patent, but independent firms. Ano ngayon yung ina-apply nilang rates and ano yung values doon? Dapat ganun din yung maging application dito. So kaya siya in-adjust ng National Tax Tribunal. Ang ending, sinabi nila na yung increase ng tax authority ng SAET on the taxable profit was actually too high and it was reduced based on the result of the relief from royalty method in valuing the asset or in valuing the intangible assets using comparable license agreements. So yun yung naging resolution, and ano for me yung key takeaways nitong case na to. As I was going through this case, so nakita ko na napaka-crucial na pala talaga ng intangibles. Ito pa yung araw na na-miss ko, and I was so regretful that I wasn't able to come on Wednesday. But after going through the material and after going through the case, kita ko naman talaga na napaka-useful na matutunan natin kung ano ba talaga yung role ng intangibles, especially in transfer pricing. Because it's one of, especially now, di ba, in digital economies, na napakaraming intangible assets, na parang yun yung driver ng business growth nowadays, it's really the intangible assets. And so, we have to recognize that we have to treat the intangible assets just like any other asset and subject it to the arm's length principle. There is no way around it na hindi porket hindi mo nakikita yung asset or hindi mo siya na physically, di ba, hindi siya tangible, di ba? But then you have to recognize that it also plays a crucial role in allowing your business to compete with others, and so you have to treat it fairly and apply the arm's length principle to it. But then, hindi kasi siya ganun ka-straightforward. Hindi siya parang truck na pwede mong lagyan ng value at alam mo kung paano mo i-depreciate, di ba? Ang crucial dito is, sige, sabihin natin na nag-agree tayo na lagyan natin na arm's length and lagyan natin na value yung intangibles. The question that remains, and I think was more the issue in the case rather than whether to include or not. The question really was, how do you value it? Diba? So, paano mo siya gagawin? So, yun yung nagiging issue natin. So medyo maliit lang yung font, no? But some thoughts that I had here, yung methods must be tested for soundness and robustness. So, hindi lang siya porket yun yung price, kunyari, na binayad or na in-apply, nung nag-transfer, then yun na rin agad yung i-assume natin na value. Hindi siya ganun ka-straightforward. We have to be able to take a look at scenarios, different scenarios wherein you have room for adjustment, room for error in the valuation of the intangible assets. So pag sinasabi natin robust, if something is robust, then that means na even if may slight changes in the conditions, more or less, mag-hold true pa rin yung value na to. So yung assumptions na ginagamit natin in valuing the intangible assets, kailangan medyo strong sila, kailangan maganda yung basis ng assumptions natin para kung may konting minor changes, for example, in economic conditions, ganun, more or less yung value ng intangible asset mo will still hold true. So, yung gray area nag-exist kasi siya in when intangibles are used and how they should be treated at different stages din. So, part of the issue in the case was, yun nga, sinusubukan ng tax authority apply yung value ng intangible assets at a time when yung nag-transfer sila. But there was an argument by the tax tribunal and also from the parties na nag-iba na yung value ng intangible asset na yan kasi hindi naman pareho yung benefit niya to the firm at every single point in time. So after some time, pwedeng hindi mo na ginagamit yung trademark na yun, nakapag-develop, nakapag-manufacture ka ng certain goods through a different method that did not use this patent-protected method, for example. And so obviously, yung value ng patent na yun is different from when it was first issued, for example. So, kailangan din natin i-recognize yung time dimension, yung time inconsistency of possible valuing intangible assets. So, ito yung key takeaways ko and I think na napaka-useful talaga ng case ng Denmark versus Beach Group in informing us on the role of intangible assets and how they play a crucial role in transfer pricing analysis. So, with that, I end my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.